Hello and welcome. To begin, I would first like to acknowledge First Nations people as the original inhabitants or as traditional owners of the land we are on today. I acknowledge all elders past and present. I live in Albion, which is a northern suburb in Brisbane. I've been living in Australia for the last 3.5 years, initially in Gold Coast and now Brisbane. In my time living here, I've come across some First Nations people's art, culture, and history, either through art galleries, cultural festivals, signboards, information panels, news, and social media. Once on a trip to Cairns, I had an opportunity to attend Umi Art's Big Dog Wanfai Indigenous Cultural Festival, which was informative and the only place where I saw a big community of First Nations people where the history and cultures were being celebrated. I thought I knew enough about the history of First Nations people, but I realized I was significantly uninformed once I started this course. I had never consciously gone around looking to see if First Nations people's cultures and values were reflected in my environment. However, this time, as I stepped out in a conscious effort to see how visible First Nations people's cultures and viewpoints were, and if they were valued where I live, I was shocked to see that the suburb I live in currently, which is Albion, has absolutely no acknowledgement of First Nations people's cultures, viewpoints, and country. Turrbal Nation people are the traditional landowners of Meanjin, which is present-day Brisbane. Albion is painted as a historic suburb with multiple heritage listed sites and buildings which are 100 to 130 years old. The Albion Hotel, Breakfast Creek Hotel, and Albion Park Racecourse are heritage listed sites which were built by white European settlers from 1850s onwards. There's also an amble about Albion Heritage Trail on the Brisbane City Council website, but no information about Turrbal Nation that acknowledges them as the traditional landowners. This is ironic because Breakfast Creek used to be an open campsite of First Nations people before the 1800s when the white European settlers came to Albion. Open campsites are places used by First Nations people out in the open rather than in a rock shelter. Open campsites were used over many generations of close to useful resources such as fresh water or fish. The settlers sought the best site for a Moreton Bay colony, the future Brisbane. They favored Breakfast Creek. They promoted Breakfast Creek because there were numerous First Nations people in these areas. These settlers viewed their villages as indicative of rich land. Violent police raids took place here since 1861 in which the camps were burned to the ground. The camps were destroyed by settlers and police at least 7 times but were continually rebuilt. At least one camp was still active into the 1890s and First Nations residents lived close by in hostels as late as 1910 and 14. Police regularly chased First Nations people across the creek each sundown. These camps were vital to Brisbane's supply of fish. Regardless of such a vast, brutal history, the only glorified histories of the establishment of European colonies and the establishment of the heritage-listed buildings and racecourse. There is graffiti artwork all over Albion, but none of them acknowledge First Nations people's cultures, and even the artists are not First Nations people. Of the total population of 2,296 people living in Albion, only 1.2% are First Nations people. I think that ignorance, lack of initiative to learn, and in general, people not caring about issues that don't directly affect them are some of the main reasons for the lack of representation and acknowledgement of First Nations people. Another thing I have noticed is that often people only care about representation when there is a quota to be filled, but not out of genuine care for equality. Coming from India, which has 200 years of colonization history, I personally understand the socio-economic and political ramifications, but at the very least, we got to keep our land, cultures, and values, unlike First Nations people whose lands were stolen, cultures and values were destroyed, and are now reduced to a minority. In conclusion, I would like to say that I want us to work together to change current practices to ensure that First Nations people get the respect, opportunities, and acknowledgement that they rightfully deserve, and I hope that we can continue to strive for equality for generations to come. Thank you for watching.